Good afternoon, ma'am. My name is Les McFadder, and I represent the plaintiff in this case, Curtis Blum, and this is a deposition. Could you tell us your full name?
Kimberlie Stultz.
Ms. Stultz, where do you currently live?
I currently reside in Cape Girardeau, Missouri.
Okay, and you were a witness to a motor vehicle crash between an automobile and a motorcycle on May 1st of 2016, correct?
Correct.
And that was over in Okaloosa County, Florida, right?
Yes.
Were you living in Okaloosa County at the time?
I was living in Santa Rosa County.
Okay. But since that time, you have since moved to Missouri?
Yes.
Okay. I want to ask you some questions specifically about the crash itself. First off, do you remember the crash?
Most of it, yes.
Do you remember roughly what time of day it was?
I know it was in the early afternoon. I was just coming from a birthday party with my daughter.
Okay. And do you recall the intersection where the crash occurred?
Hughes and Eglin.
All right. And you were in your vehicle at that time?
Correct.
And where was your vehicle situated in relation to that intersection?
I believe I was sitting to wait and make a left turn onto Eglin from Hughes.
Okay. Were you in a turn lane on Hughes?
I believe so.
Okay. And that intersection is controlled by a traffic light?
Correct.
And what was the signal for you?
I was at a red light.
Okay. As you're sitting at the red light, waiting for the light to change, can you kind of just tell us what you recall about the accident, maybe a few moments before the crash, leading up to the time of the crash? What did you see?
I recall seeing a motorcycle approaching, coming from the left, going, I don't know if it was, I believe it was north, possibly, depending on what area that was. I'm bad with that. But he was coming from the left, the direction I was going to be turning, going straight. And then I see a car coming from the right, making a left turn to pass where I was sitting, right in front of him.
Okay. And so the motorcycle was going straight. Was the car making a turn?
Yes.
All right. And what happened next?
The car hit him.
Okay. Were you able to tell anything about the speed of the vehicles that were involved?
I believe he was going the speed limit, and they were coming from a stopped position at the light.
Okay. Do you know what the light was for traffic on Eglin Parkway, whether or not there was a turn signal or a steady green light, or do you know?
It usually stayed steady green signal, but you had to yield to the traffic.
Who would have to yield to the traffic?
The person making the left turn.
All right. You witnessed the actual impact between my client's motorcycle and the other vehicle?
Correct.
Could you describe that impact for me?
They hit pretty hard. I can't recall who hit who, but I know that it was a pretty brutal impact.
Okay. Were you able to tell whether or not Mr. Blum, the gentleman on the motorcycle, was he wearing any sort of protective gear?
He was wearing full protective gear.
Helmet?
Helmet, yes.
Okay. After the crash, what did you do?
I immediately parked my car and called 911 and got out of my vehicle to ask the others if they could tell if he was okay.
Okay. Did you ever walk up to where Mr. Blum was? I'm assuming he was in the roadway after the crash?
Could you repeat that last part, please?
Yes. I said, I'm assuming Mr. Blum was still in the roadway at this point?
Yes.
And did you ever go up to him?
Yes.
What did you see when you got up to him?
He was laying on the ground. He his body was twitching. He wasn't talking. He wasn't coherent. He wasn't conscious at all.
What part of his body was twitching?
It was his hand.
His hand?
Yes.
Do you remember, was it his right hand or his left hand?
I want to say it was his left hand.
Okay. Any other parts of his body twitching, like legs or anything like that, or was it primarily
It was his foot as
upper
well.
leg?
His feet as well.
Okay. How long did this twitching go on?
I am unsure as to the exact time frame. I was still on the phone with the police and the ambulance trying to guide them there.
Okay. While you were at the scene, did you ever lay hands on Mr. Blum or touch him or reposition him in any way?
I did not.
Okay. Do you remember having any conversations with anybody at the scene?
I remember talking to a couple of people. As far as the exact conversation, I have no idea. We did make sure to let people know not to move him.
Okay. Did you ever have a chance to speak with the lady that was driving the car that Mr. Blum was involved in the crash with?
I did not speak with her, no.
After you called 911 and hung up the phone with them, what was the next thing that you did that you recall?
I moved my car over to the parking lot next to where I was sitting in it was the Dollar General parking lot. I moved it over there and waited for the police officer to come and speak with me.
Okay, and the police officer eventually came. Did you give him or her a statement?
Yes, I did.
All right. Now, did you stay on the scene while Mr. Blum was receiving any medical care from any of the first responders?
I was on the scene until I believe it was after they had already taken him to the ambulance.
Did you ever have any conversations with any of the first responders, the EMTs, firefighters, or paramedics?
I did not.
After Mr. Blum was taken away from the scene, did you ever have any communications with him?
I spoke with his family. They had thanked me for helping and calling 911 the way I did.
When did you speak with his family members?
They contacted me, I believe it was the next day.
Okay. Do you remember, was it a man, a woman, or both?
I spoke with his father, his stepmother, and his mother.
Okay. Have you had any other conversations with either Mr. Blum or anyone in his family since that day?
They asked me to come and see him and speak with him in the hospital, and I did. And then I had spoken to his mom a couple of times. I believe it was in 2016 to see how he was doing and to ask as far as his welfare goes. And then since then, no.
Tell me about when you went to the hospital. What did you see and what conversations did you have, if you recall?
I recall the conversations that they were having and talking to me about was he was having issues with his memory. They were asking him, they were doing some exercises with him while I was there to find out exactly how much he could remember. I know that he was having a lot of problems remembering certain things about his life that they spoke with him about. He was moving around okay, not great, but mainly the main thing I can remember was he was having a lot of issues.
Okay, a lot of issues with remembering things?
Yes.
Now, going back to the actual scene, when you first came upon Mr. Blum, was he conscious or was he unconscious?
He was unconscious.
From the time that the crash occurred until the time that he left in the ambulance, do you know if Mr. Blum ever regained consciousness from your observation?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Can you hold just 1 second, please?
Sure. That's a first.
Sorry.
We're ready.
All right, very good. So, all right, just to make, no conversations with Miss Chancellor, the lady that was in the car.
No.
Do you remember what kind of car she was driving?
I remember it was green or a greenish blue.
Okay. Do you remember the type of car?
No, not really.
Is there anything else about this particular incident that you think we ought to be aware of or know? I mean, I think I've kind of walked through the basics of what you saw and where you were seated. But is there anything else you'd like to point out that you remember about this particular crash?
The only thing I could note is it really seemed like the person involved, the people involved, he was following his laws. She wasn't paying attention.
Okay. Then, ma'am, with that, I don't have any other questions. Mr. Fretland may have a few for you.
No questions.